Hello and welcome to the Stronghold Digital Mining Daily Update. Today is Wednesday, September 13th, 2023. My name is Steven Zeiner. We're going to talk a bit more about how we have the potential to make a lot of money. Now, I know that may seem like a very basic topic, right? But when I pulled back a little bit and I took a fresh view of the entire business, things really started to come into focus for me. So think about it this way. We have these waste coal reclamation facilities. They basically take in waste coal and potentially some tire-derived fuels, which basically just help the waste coal burn more efficiently. So we take that stuff in. Then there are three things that are a product of the waste coal reclamation facility, arguably. So the first thing is electricity. And then there are two things that we can do with that electricity, and we've talked about this before. The first thing is we can divert that electricity, or not just divert it, rather, just sell it, let's say, sell it to the grid, right, to the PJM electrical grid that powers the lighting where I happen to live, for example. The second thing we can do is, in this case, it would be sort of like diverting it, so to speak, to our in-house data centers. Stronghold Digital Mining has data centers at Scrubgrass. That's the waste coal reclamation facility in Western Pennsylvania. And there's a data center at Panther Creek, which is the waste coal reclamation facility here on the eastern side of the state of Pennsylvania. So these data centers contain Bitcoin mining machines. So with the electricity that we produce at these waste coal reclamation facilities, and that electricity, of course, is produced as a result of burning this waste coal material, while at the same time, I might add, removing like 99.9% of all the really bad cancer-causing stuff, the byproduct of that process is electricity. So sell it to the grid, use it to mine Bitcoin. What else? Okay. Another byproduct of this process, right, is something called beneficial use ash. Sometimes it's referred to as fly ash. So there are two things that are typically done with fly ash, or, beneficial use ash. You can, really critically, you got to take a portion of that beneficial use ash and then take it back to the land where the waste coal had previously been located. And then that helps stabilize the ground. It just kind of helps with the land reclamation process. A substantial portion of the rest of all of that beneficial use ash can be used in something, the acronym is SCMs. It's like supplementary cementitious materials, right? SCMs. And what you essentially do is that can go not so much as a substitute for cement, right? But it's something that would be a supplement that goes into the overall concrete making process. And it's really, really helpful to the concrete industry. And there is an economic value for us being able to do that, okay? So that's what happens with this beneficial use ash. Now, there's yet another potential source of revenue. So as a result of our waste coal reclamation, right, process, right, what happens at these facilities, again, we burn the waste coal, tire-derived fuel, we get all the cancer-causing stuff out of it, most of it at least, but you still have CO2. You still have carbon dioxide, right, that's released into the atmosphere. What if that carbon dioxide could actually become not only a target, right, for our environmental remediation efforts, but also become a source of revenue? So as I've recently alluded to, there are increased tax credits that were included in the Inflation Reduction Act, which went into law about a year ago. And that essentially creates now a potential new revenue stream for Stronghold Digital Mining. And that's something that's been talked about during our investor presentations. And the most recent one, Greg said, hey, keep asking the question, because we're hopeful that in the next couple of quarters, we might have a really, really positive press release and an announcement regarding that particular project. Now, why does this matter? Well, I think it really, really matters when you think about how sometimes ultra competitive and challenging the Bitcoin ecosystem, right? The Bitcoin mining ecosystem can be when looked at in isolation, okay? We are approaching a Bitcoin halving sometime next year, probably maybe middle to late April of next year, maybe early May. It really depends, right? So that's going to have a material impact on the block rewards. Without getting into a lot of technicals, it just kind of means that like the amount of revenue that's generated from Bitcoin mining gets cut in half. What does not get cut in half is our ability to sell energy, electricity to the grid. What does not get cut in half is the potential to generate meaningful revenue from beneficial use hash. What definitely does not get cut in half is the amount of carbon dioxide that our waste coal reclamation facilities will be releasing into the atmosphere. And so as an environmental company, right, and a company that has a deep, I think, passion and interest in waste coal remediation, right, land reclamation, it makes sense that as a company, Stronghold Digital Mining would also be saying, hey, well, maybe there's a way, in addition to, we already do a great job, right? No company's perfect, but we do a really good job. I would argue the company does a great job of removing the overwhelming majority of all that noxious, carcinogenic stuff that's typically otherwise released into the atmosphere when these waste coal piles just, burn and smolder on their own. We remove a lot of that as a result of diverting that coal, right, that waste coal, into our purpose-built waste coal reclamation facilities. But hey, what if in addition to that, what if we could actually remove a substantial portion of the carbon dioxide that would otherwise be emitted in the atmosphere and have it diverted into something productive and, and or potentially also be able to maybe tap into some carbon, sequestration, right? Or carbon capture. Usually it's said interchangeably, carbon capture and sequestration. But I'm just saying, based on some of the research I've done, there are a lot of different avenues to explore as it relates to carbon capture. And the reality is there's a number now, right? There's like a roughly, on the high end, $85. Sure, it's 180 if you're doing direct air, carbon capture. We're not probably going to be doing that. But for our purposes, it's more like between $60 and $85 per ton. And, these plants cumulatively release like many hundreds of thousands of tons of carbon dioxide. So what if we can actually mitigate that and at the same time tap into a brand new revenue stream? That's not going to be cut in half as a result of the halving. Now, Bitcoin is the reason we've come together, right? Like the reason why we're having so many of these conversations, the reason we're even aware that Stronghold Digital Mining exists in the first place is because they're pretty much well known, or at least relatively well known within the relatively small Bitcoin mining ecosystem as a Bitcoin mining company, a publicly traded Bitcoin mining company. So what am I suggesting here? That, we throw in the towel on Bitcoin mining? Of course not. I mean, the reality is we are so hypersensitive at this point based on the way we've structured things to hash price. Note, I'm saying hash price, not hash rate. So the hash price, that is the number that takes into consideration the price of Bitcoin. It takes into consideration any transaction fees, and it also takes into consideration the overall Bitcoin network hash rate. So it's like a true number, okay? We are so levered to hash price. I think I calculated that for every 1 penny move in the hash price, right, based on our having, say, 4 exahash of internal Bitcoin mining capacity, right, it's about a $3.6 million additional amount of revenue. Okay, I mean it's a really staggering number. Just, pull out your calculator and multiply 4 million, because remember, 4 exahash, you got to think in terms of millions here. You multiply 4 million by, say, for example, a hash price of, say, 15 cents. Okay, and look at that number, and then multiply that number by 90 days to give you a sense of what a quarterly number might look like. And, these numbers are staggering. Now, some people say, hey, hash price is only going to go down from here. It's never going to get up past 7 cents. I disagree with those assessments because if you kind of look historically at the way hash price moves, as you move into a halving, there are oftentimes, at least historically, right? And again, even though I realize the past isn't a predictor of the future, but, we got to have something to go on here. Generally speaking, hash price will see better days. And if we're in a position which we are now, right, to really take advantage of that, our revenue is going to absolutely skyrocket, which is a phenomenal thing. So we're not throwing in the towel on Bitcoin, okay, not at all. But I think it is very useful to have downside protection. And I think one of the real huge differentiating factors between Stronghold Digital Mining and a lot of other publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies is that we really do have a lot of different ways to win. Okay, from selling electricity straight to the grid, to doing something really productive and useful with beneficial use hash, to potentially capturing carbon dioxide, right, that's emitted from these power plants, and turning that not only into something that's a win for the environment, but that's a huge, huge win for us, right, for Stronghold Digital Mining as a company. I like win-win scenarios, as you probably already know by now. So these things all put together make me extremely, extremely bullish on Stronghold Digital Mining, like extremely bullish. I hadn't really appreciated the whole carbon capture thing. I mean, I kind of like appreciated it, but I didn't really appreciate it till I started doing some of the math. And I'm like, man, if we're pocketing even just a small bit of that, it's really, really helpful revenue, to say the least. So, okay, as always, we're going to stay positive, we're going to be great, and we're going to see each other again tomorrow. And hopefully, I might add, this kind of gives you a better sense now of like, hey, yeah, it's not just like we're praying for hash price. Yes, we're going to pray for hash price, and we're going to hope for a much higher hash price in the future, of course, okay? But it's really nice to know that we've got some other levers that we're working simultaneously that have the potential to also generate some really useful revenue. So I'll leave you with that. I'll see you tomorrow.